He had just stepped out of the hotel lobby, a warm smile on his face and a briefcase in hand. Within seconds, flashing red and blue lights painted the pavement, and an aggressive voice barked, "Hands where I can see them." In broad daylight, in front of guests and staff, a black man was slammed against the wall and cuffed without question. But the officer had no idea who he was, or what would happen next. What unfolded in the next few minutes would leave the entire city talking, and the cop begging for forgiveness. Hey, if this is your first time here, smash that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss what's coming next. The streets outside the Continental Grand Hotel buzzed with late-morning activity. Valets jogged to retrieve luxury cars, bellhops wheeled golden carts across the marble sidewalk, and tourists snapped selfies in front of the glittering lobby. It was the kind of place where people wore confidence like a suit, and a black man walking alone, quietly, became an easy target. Marcus Deshaun Carter wasn't trying to stand out. Dressed in a simple white t-shirt, blue jeans, and a brown jacket, he blended into the crowd. He walked with a calm, assured rhythm, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes focused ahead. Then the screeching sound of tires sliced through the air. A black and white cruiser lurched onto the sidewalk. People stepped back in alarm as the door flung open and an officer stormed out, one hand already near his gun. "Hey, you!" he barked, pointing at Marcus like he was a wanted animal. "Turn around. Hands where I can see them." Marcus paused, confused but controlled. "Is there a problem, officer?" The cop approached fast, his hand now gripping the holster. "Don't move. Don't talk. Face the wall. Hands up. Now." Marcus complied. Slowly, calmly, hands raised, he turned toward the stone hotel wall, his back to the officer. A small crowd began to gather. Hotel guests, tourists, a concierge peeking out of the revolving door. "Say, I believe you have the wrong." Crack. The cop slammed Marcus's face against the wall, pinning him hard with a forearm to his back. The force rattled Marcus's jaw. "Shut up. You fit the description." "I haven't done anything." The officer grunted, twisted Marcus's arms behind him, and yanked out handcuffs. No reading of rights. No questions. Just raw force. "You got ID? Weapons? Drugs?" Marcus winced. "My wallet's in my jacket." The officer didn't ask permission. He shoved his hand into Marcus's inner jacket pocket, pulled out the wallet, and tossed it onto the hood of the cruiser. Then, still gripping Marcus's cuffed arms, he shoved him against the squad car. Hard. The cop's partner stood nearby, saying nothing. A bystander, a young woman in hotel staff uniform, pulled out her phone and started recording. "Get his legs," the first cop snapped. Marcus didn't resist, but the officer kicked his ankles apart anyway, then searched his pockets roughly, slapping his hands down his body like he was shaking down a thug. "You think you're slick? Hey," the officer muttered. "What were you doing inside that hotel?" "Meeting someone." "Sure you way. You got a record?" "No. We'll see." With a hard push, the cop shoved Marcus into the back of the cruiser. No words. No dignity. Just metal, heat, and silence. The crowd was larger now. Whispers and recordings buzzed. The officer ignored them all. He picked up the wallet, opened it, then paused. His eyebrows twitched. He pulled out an ID. Then froze. His face shifted. Confusion first, then something darker. Because there, staring back at him, wasn't some made-up ID. It was a real, official federal badge. Not local. Not city. Homeland Security. Special Agent Marcus Deshaun Carter. The cop's mouth went dry. He looked up at the car, where Marcus sat in the backseat, calm, silent, and watching him with eyes that said, "I gave you the rope. You hung yourself." Officer Brian Malloy stood frozen, Marcus's ID still in his trembling hand. The name burned into his memory now. Marcus Deshaun Carter. Federal Agent, Department of Homeland Security. Clearance level, top secret. His partner, Officer Jennings, leaned over his shoulder. "What's taking so?" Jennings saw the badge and stepped back like he'd touched fire. "Oh, Dan." Malloy's throat tightened. His arrogance drained, replaced by cold sweat. He glanced around, tourists still recording, the hotel doorman whispering to someone on the phone, and the girl in uniform still holding her camera up. The weight of what he'd done slammed into his chest like a bullet. He hadn't just cuffed the wrong guy. He had manhandled a high-ranking federal agent on private business, in broad daylight, with cameras rolling. Malloy tried to breathe. He turned to Jennings. "Get him out of the car. Now." "But—" "Now, Jennings." Jennings rushed to the back door, fumbling with the handle. Marcus stepped out slowly, cuffs still on. His expression hadn't changed. Still calm. Still silent. Malloy swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. "Sir, I need to apologize. I didn't realize." Marcus turned, his eyes locked onto Malloy's. He didn't speak. Just stood there, watching, unblinking. That silence was worse than yelling. Jennings removed the cuffs. "Agent Carter, sir, it was a mistake. There was a report of suspicious activity." Marcus rubbed his wrists and nodded once. "You'll be hearing from my office." Malloy tried to salvage control. "Say, if I can just explain." Marcus stepped forward, closing the distance. The way he moved, sharp, trained, calculated, made both officers stiffen. He leaned in and whispered so only Malloy could hear. "You didn't even ask for my ID." Malloy's lips parted, but no words came out. Marcus stepped back. "Check your car's dash cam. And every phone pointed at you. I'm sure you'll find a suspicious activity report that'll interest your captain." Then, without another word, he turned his back to them, fearless, and walked back toward the hotel's grand entrance. Malloy stood there, heart pounding. It was only then that he noticed the black SUV parked across the street. A man in a black suit stood outside it, wearing an earpiece. He was watching everything. Jennings mumbled, "We're screwed, aren't we?" Malloy didn't answer. He couldn't, because in that moment, he wasn't a cop anymore. He was just a man who handcuffed the wrong black man. A man with more power, more reach, and more connections than he could ever imagine. And Marcus, he wasn't done yet. Back at the precinct, the air was thick with tension. Lieutenant Harper slammed the file down on his desk, eyes blazing. "What the hell happened out there? I want a full report, now." Officer Malloy sat stiffly across from him, swallowing hard. "Say, it was a routine stop, until the suspect showed his badge." Harper's jaw clenched. "Marcus Deshawn Carter, the federal agent." Malloy nodded. Harper ran a hand through his hair. "This is bad. Real bad. That man's not just any agent. He's one of the highest-level operatives in the DHS. We just humiliated a man who could shut this department down with one call." The room fell silent. From the back, a young sergeant cleared his throat. "Say, the girl at the hotel recorded the whole thing. It's already online." Harper cursed under his breath. "I want every video downloaded, secured, and anyone who leaks this. I don't care who, dealt with. Understand?" "Yes, say." Malloy's voice was barely audible. "Lieutenant, what about Agent Carter? Should we reach out? Apologize?" Harper's eyes darkened. "No, we don't apologize. We brace for the fallout. This is going to get worse before it gets better." Meanwhile, across town, Marcus sat in a quiet cafe, eyes on his phone as news alerts popped up. Headlines flashed. Police mistake federal agent for suspect in racial profiling incident. Outrage grows over brutal arrest of Homeland Security official. Video shows officer handcuffing innocent man outside hotel. Marcus's fingers hovered over the screen. He didn't respond to the notifications. He was already planning his next move. The precinct felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. The low hum of conversations buzzed beneath the sterile fluorescent lights, but behind every glance, every whispered sentence, a storm of anxiety roiled. Brian Malloy sat at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen, though his mind was miles away. His phone lay face up beside the keyboard, buzzing incessantly with notifications, calls, and messages, none of which he dared to answer. He wasn't just an officer now. He was the officer, the man who had handcuffed a federal agent, a man of great influence, and had been caught on camera doing so. The videos that showed the arrest had gone viral within hours. The precinct's digital security team scrambled to track every clip and download every piece of footage. But the damage was done. Public outcry exploded, and the media had picked up the story like wildfire. Malloy felt the weight of 1,000 eyes bearing down on him. His hands trembled involuntarily. He could still hear the echo of Marcus Carter's calm voice, his controlled, measured words cutting through the chaos. That look Marcus had given him, a mixture of disbelief and silent warning, haunted Malloy now. He could never erase that moment from his memory. The corridor outside his desk buzzed with activity as officers passed by, shooting him furtive looks. Some nodded with sympathy, others with barely disguised judgment. He knew the conversations. That's the guy who arrested the federal agent. Is he going to lose his badge over this? Man, that video, it's all over the news. Malloy had never felt so alone. A sharp knock on the glass partition broke his reverie. Lieutenant Harper's stern face appeared, his eyes dark and unreadable. Malloy, my office. Now. Malloy's chest tightened. He nodded silently, rose unsteadily, and followed the lieutenant down the hallway. The air seemed thicker, heavier. As he walked, the murmurs growing louder, more pointed. As he entered Harper's office, the door closed behind him with a hollow thud. The lieutenant's gaze pinned him to the spot. Sit down, Harper ordered, voice low but firm. Malloy obeyed, hands clasped tightly in his lap. We have a problem, Harper began, folding his hands on the desk. No, scratch that. We have a crisis. Malloy swallowed hard, heart hammering against his ribs. Agent Marcus Carter isn't just some federal agent. He's a high-ranking operative with Homeland Security. You know what that means, right? Yes, sir, Malloy whispered. Harper's eyes narrowed. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you treated him like any other suspect, with unnecessary force and zero respect. Malloy's throat tightened. I followed protocol, sir. Protocol. Malloy, you handcuffed the man before confirming his identity. You ignored his badge when he showed it. The video shows you forcibly grabbing him, using aggressive language. Do you think that looks good on this department? The room was thick with tension. Malloy's voice cracked. I didn't mean to. I was just doing my job. Harper leaned forward, voice sharp as a blade. Your job is to protect and save, not to fuel racial profiling or escalate situations unnecessarily. This is exactly the kind of incident that tears communities apart. Malloy's eyes filled with shame. I'm sorry, sir. I know I messed up. Harper sighed deeply. Sorry isn't going to cut it here, Brian. We're already facing media scrutiny, protests, and pressure from city officials. This could ruin careers, yours included. The lieutenant's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then back at Malloy. We've got an emergency meeting in 20 minutes. Senior staff only. You're going to be under the microscope, Malloy. Prepare yourself. Malloy nodded numbly. Down in the squad room, whispers had turned into tense chatter. Sergeant Diaz paced back and forth, barking orders and trying to keep a grip on the spiraling situation. We need a strategy, Diaz said to the group of senior officers gathered around a conference table. The city's watching. The media's all over this. And that video. It's all anyone talks about. Captain Reynolds rubbed his temples. We need to contain the damage fast. Issue a statement. Start an internal review. But we can't admit liability yet. That's legal suicide. Lieutenant Harper nodded. Agreed. But we also can't stonewall. We're dealing with a federal agent, remember? This isn't just some local arrest. Is there any way to reach out to Agent Carter? Diaz asked. Harper shook his head. His people are already mobilizing. He's demanding meetings, investigations, accountability. A young officer spoke up hesitantly. Sir, what about Malloy? Is he going to be suspended? Harper's gaze hardened. Not yet. But if we find misconduct, disciplinary action will follow. Malloy is under review. Back in his small apartment, Malloy sat alone in the dark, replaying every second of the incident over and over in his head. Could I have done things differently? He wondered. Should I have listened more carefully? Trusted my instincts less? His phone chimed again. A message popped up from an unknown number. You need to be ready. This is bigger than you think. Malloy's hand shook. He didn't know who sent it, but the warning felt real. The fallout was only just beginning. Across the city, Marcus Carter sat in a quiet cafe, untouched by the chaos unfolding at the precinct. His expression was calm, controlled, but inside, he was already strategizing. He knew the power he held, and he planned to use it, not just to clear his name, but to force real change. Because this wasn't just about him. It was about the countless others who suffered similar injustices every day. The air inside the precinct briefing room was thick with tension. Officers, detectives, and supervisors gathered, faces grim, the usual banter swallowed by the weight of the scandal that had exploded overnight. The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, casting shadows that seemed to dance across the walls like the ghosts of past mistakes. Brian Malloy sat near the back of the room, his eyes fixed on the polished wooden table before him. His fingers tapped nervously, a quiet staccato of unease. The room was packed with the upper echelons of the department, Captain Reynolds, Lieutenant Harper, Sergeant Diaz, all summoned to handle the crisis spiraling beyond their control. At the front, City Police Chief Harding stood, an imposing figure of authority, his usual composed demeanor fraying at the edges. His voice was heavy but controlled as he addressed the room. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis," Chief Harding began, his eyes scanning the crowd. "The incident involving Officer Malloy and Agent Marcus Carter has sparked outrage across the city, drawing national attention. This is not just a departmental issue anymore. It's a public emergency." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We must act swiftly, transparently, and decisively." Malloy's heart pounded as the chief's gaze briefly landed on him. The weight of expectation, judgment, and impending consequence crushed down. Harper stepped forward, clearing his throat. "An internal affairs investigation has been launched. Officer Malloy will be placed on administrative leave during the review. Meanwhile, we're coordinating with federal authorities to ensure full cooperation." Murmurs rippled through the room. Malloy's jaw clenched, his mind swirling with regret and fear. He had seen the videos, read the comments, the accusations of racism, abuse of power, and misconduct. Some called for his firing, others demanded systemic reform. But amid the chaos, one question consumed him. How did it come to this? Outside the precinct, news vans lined the streets, reporters shouting questions, flashing cameras capturing every movement. Protesters gathered nearby, holding signs and chanting slogans demanding justice and accountability. Malloy left the briefing in a daze, escorted by 2 officers to his car. The murmurs from onlookers pierced through the windows, a constant reminder that his life had irrevocably changed. Once inside his apartment, Malloy sank onto the couch, exhaustion washing over him like a tide. His phone buzzed relentlessly, texts, missed calls, news alerts, but he ignored them all. He needed time to think. Meanwhile, Marcus Carter's world was a whirlwind of activity. In a secure conference room of a federal building, he met with high-ranking officials, lawyers, and public relations experts. His calm demeanor masked a burning determination to not only clear his name but to force change within a system long plagued by prejudice and abuse. "This incident," Marcus said, voice steady, "is a catalyst. It's time we rethink how law enforcement interacts with communities, especially Black Americans." His words resonated beyond the room, igniting a firestorm of debate nationwide. Back in the precinct, Malloy's absence was palpable. Some officers whispered about his downfall, others debated the implications for the department. Sergeant Diaz gathered a small group. "This is a wake-up call," he said. "We need to address the culture here. It's not just about one officer, it's about the whole system." Days later, Malloy met with his lawyer, who advised him on the looming legal and professional consequences. "This isn't just about the department anymore," she warned. "You're facing federal scrutiny, public backlash, and possible civil lawsuits." Malloy nodded, the reality settling like a stone in his stomach. Public hearings were scheduled, with Marcus Carter testifying before city officials. His testimony was powerful, detailed, and unflinching. "I was handcuffed without cause," he stated firmly. "The treatment I received is a symptom of a larger problem, one that demands urgent attention." The city listened, and for the first time in a long while, change felt possible. Malloy, isolated and reflective, began attending community meetings and bias training programs mandated by the department. Each session forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and the system he served. Brian Malloy's heart pounded as he sat stiffly in the conference room of the precinct. The walls were cold, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. Across the table sat Captain Reynolds and Lieutenant Harper, two faces Malloy had once respected, now looking back at him with a mixture of disappointment and steely resolve. Beside him, Naomi Benson, his lawyer, sat quietly, flipping through a folder, the weight of the situation settling like a stone in her chest. The door clicked shut behind them. Malloy's mind raced, each tick of the clock echoing louder. He wanted to plead, to explain, to deny, but the silence from the other side of the table told a different story. Captain Reynolds cleared his throat. "Brian, you know why we're here." His voice was low, careful, as if trying to soften the blow. After the incident involving Agent Carter, the internal affairs investigation, and the overwhelming public backlash, the department has come to a difficult decision. Lieutenant Harper spoke next, cutting through the tension like a blade. "We're asking you to resign from the department, effective immediately." Malloy's throat tightened. His hands clenched into fists on the table. "Resign?" His voice barely a whisper, thick with disbelief and anger. "I didn't do anything wrong." Naomi shifted in her seat, offering a calm presence. "Brian, let's hear them out," she said softly. Reynolds nodded. "The video footage, witness statements, and the public's reaction have created a crisis that the department cannot afford to ignore. We believe this is the best way to move forward, for you, for the department, and for the community." Malloy's mind flashed to the moments he was handcuffing Marcus Carter. The frustration, the fear, the heat of the moment. He knew now it had been wrong, but admitting that he, in front of these men, felt like surrendering everything he'd worked for. Naomi leaned forward, addressing the captains. "If this is the department's position, then we need to negotiate the terms of Brian's departure. Severance, a statement of mutual agreement, and a chance to protect his future." Harper's eyes flickered. "We're prepared to offer a severance package, contingent upon your cooperation and a non-disclosure agreement." Malloy swallowed hard. The reality was sinking in. He was being pushed out, his badge stripped, his career ended, not because of a fair trial, but because the pressure from outside was too great. After what felt like hours, the terms were outlined. Malloy's name would be cleared of criminal charges, but his career as a police officer was over. The severance was modest, his reputation tarnished. As the meeting ended, Malloy rose slowly. Naomi gave him a reassuring nod, but he barely noticed. Walking out of the precinct's glass doors, the cold air hit him like a slap. Cameras flashed. Protesters shouted outside, their voices a relentless wave of condemnation. For the first time in his life, Malloy felt utterly alone. Back in his apartment that night, Malloy sat in the dim light, staring at the badge he'd removed from his uniform, now just a metal pin, meaningless in his hand. His thoughts spiraled. Shame, anger, regret, fear. Naomi's voice echoed in his mind from earlier. "This isn't the end. There are still options. Appeals. Legal battles. But you have to face the consequences, Brian." He clenched his jaw. He had always believed in the badge, the justice it represented. Now, it felt like a chain dragging him down. His phone buzzed with messages, news alerts, texts from former colleagues, strangers condemning or condemning him. The city was watching, judging. Yet beneath the storm, a faint spark of resolve glimmered. He couldn't undo what happened, but maybe he could still find a way forward. The days following the meeting were a blur of cold coffee, sleepless nights, and a relentless storm of emotions Brian Malloy had never experienced before. The badge was gone. The uniform hung in his closet like a ghost, a reminder of the man he once was, or thought he was. His phone buzzed constantly, news alerts flashing his name in headlines that accused, condemned, and dissected his every action. The story of the racist cop who handcuffed a black man outside a hotel had ignited a firestorm, and Malloy was at the center, a man both vilified and pitted. Naomi was a steady presence, but even she could only do so much. Their days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and careful negotiations. The department was eager to close the chapter, but Malloy knew the fight had only just begun. Each morning, Malloy faced the mirror with a heavy heart. His reflection showed a man unraveling, eyes darkened by sleepless nights, jaw clenched with frustration and regret. The shame burned like acid, yet beneath it, a stubborn ember refused to die. Outside, the city was changing. Protest grew louder, demanding justice not just for Marcus Carter, but for all who had suffered under systemic injustice. The media circled like vultures, hungry for every detail. Malloy knew one thing with crystal clarity. He couldn't run from this. He had to face it head-on, to seek redemption, to make amends, to rebuild what had been shattered. The first step was confronting the reality of his situation. The department had cut ties, but the law had not. There were investigations to come, lawsuits, and a court of public opinion far harsher than any precinct room. One morning, as dawn filtered weakly through his blinds, Malloy sat at his kitchen table, the weight of it all pressing down. Naomi was beside him, laptop open, documents spread out. "The department wants to settle quickly," she said, voice calm but firm. "They want to avoid a trial, bad press, and more protests." "And what do we want?" Malloy's voice was raw. "Truth, accountability, and a chance for you to tell your side. But more than that, to find a way to make things right." Malloy nodded slowly. Redemption was a long road, but he was ready to walk it. He thought of Marcus Carter, the man who had been handcuffed, humiliated, but who had stood tall in the face of injustice. He wanted to reach out, to listen, to understand. Days turned into weeks. Malloy met with community leaders, activists, and counselors. He volunteered at local programs aiming to bridge the gap between law enforcement and marginalized communities. Each interaction peeled back layers of denial and defensiveness, forcing him to see the world through different eyes. But not everyone was forgiving. Some saw him only as a symbol of a broken system, a man who had betrayed his oath. Threatening calls came. His family faced backlash. The path was lonely and painful. Yet Malloy persisted. One afternoon, Naomi brought news that shook him. The department was ready to release a public statement acknowledging mishandling of the incident and promising reforms, a rare admission of fault. It was a small victory but a significant one. Malloy prepared his own statement carefully, speaking honestly about his mistakes, his desire to change, and the need for systemic reform. The statement went viral, sparking debates, support, and fierce criticism alike. As the chapter closed, Malloy stood at a crossroads. His career was over, but his journey was not. He could let the scandal define him forever, or he could use it as a catalyst for change. For himself, for Marcus Carter, and for a fractured community hungry for justice. He chose the latter. No one should ever be judged or treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. Every person deserves respect, dignity, and justice, regardless of their background. It's on all of us to stand against prejudice and work toward a world where fairness and equality are the norm, not the exception. Thanks for watching and standing with us in this fight for justice and humanity.